quasi here. In the year 1920, a theory of quantum physics arose that shook the world forever. This theory was Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg's Copenhagen interpretation. It suggests that a quantum system remains in a superposition of states, i.e. existing in all possible states at once until it's observed or measured. And upon measurement, the wave function collapses and the system settles into one definitive state. Something interesting happened 37 years later. In 1957, Hugh Everett III proposed a radically different perspective known as the many worlds interpretation. Now, according to the many worlds interpretation, all possible outcomes of a quantum event actually occur in some branch or world in a vast multiverse. Each time a quantum measurement is made, the universe splits into multiple worlds to accommodate each possible outcome. In this interpretation, the wave function actually never collapses, and all potential states continue to exist in separate, non-communicating universes. The observer in each universe only perceives one of these outcomes, thus explaining why we don't see superposition in our everyday world. I want you to notice one key thing that both of these theories have in common. The thing that makes a split in the worlds or collapse in both of these theories is actually the act of measurement or observation. Over the last 9 years, after deeply studying quantum phenomena, ancient yogis, Buddhists, Sufists, monks, this one word always kept popping up: observation. In order to observe something, we must give it our attention. What I've discovered is that when we can correctly attribute the right kind of attention, we're able to manifest the desired quantum event in our very lives. In this video, I'm going to share with you how you can use your attention to create the reality that you want, and why learning how to direct your attention is the most powerful thing you can do as a reality creator. So with that, let's get started. So now, let's get to understanding how our attention actually dictates the version of reality that gets manifested. In order to understand that, we have to understand how energy flows. Anytime you're feeling stuck in your life, you feel like you've been working towards something and it just hasn't been happening, or similar situations keep arising, same revenue roller coaster, same relationships you keep attracting, what you have to understand is somewhere there is stuck energy, okay? If energy cannot flow, which is what needs to happen with energy, it gets stagnant. And when it gets stagnant, we experience the same circumstance. But what directs the flow of energy? Attention. Wherever attention goes, energy flows. Our focus and our attention determines where energy flows. What most people don't know is that the nature of our attention, there are two main types of attention that we possess. There is what's called polar attention and non-polar attention. Polar attention has the power to attract and repel reality. Let's get rid of the repel part and focus solely on the attract part, because they're one and the same. Okay, any problem flipped to its side becomes the solution. Two different sides of the same coin. If I'm attracting something, I'm repelling something else. That's what polar attention does. Non-polar attention is completely neutral. It has the power to dissolve reality. Now, in terms of quantum events manifesting into our lives, let's look at, with a diagram, what this could mean. If we have two types of polar attentions, the positive attention and the negative attention. When we think positively about something, life doesn't care about the real nature of our attention. It cares about the content. If I hate bills and I hate losing money, I'm going to get more of the event of losing money and bills. If I love making money and I love growing, then I will get more of the thing that I love, growing and making more money. Okay? For us, human beings, how we've been conditioned is throughout our whole lives, we've lived in a fear and survival mode, because that's become our biology. All around us, we've been conditioned to, first and foremost, survive. What's the most important or most powerful way to survive? Eliminate and avoid any threat to your survival. Okay, so we've been conditioned to live in this protection mode, this avoid conflict, avoid taking risks. A lot of us have been conditioned this way. And because of that, we keep experiencing more and more of the thing that we're worried about. So just think about what you see on the news. think about what you read on social media and think about why there's more fear-mongering than anything else going on. That's what others can hook onto, the pendulums, all of the societal conditioning around us. That's how they can manipulate us and influence us, when they can hook onto our fears. In fear, anger, and pride, we can be moved into action the most effectively. Please take a moment to reflect on that. There's so many prideful people who are ready to go to war to protect the thing that they love, and they're so proud of it, right? While that's great, it makes them blind to what's really going on. And it's very, very easy to get someone to do a certain desired type of action when they're angry. And it's very easy to make someone do a certain kind of action when they're fearful. So fear, anger, and pride is what society keeps us stuck in, keeps our attention focused on, which makes us do things that we don't necessarily want to do. So for most people, they keep experiencing the same relationships over and over because they keep holding on to this trauma from the past. Their attention is more focused on avoiding the kind of relationships they've had, which is why they keep attracting that same kind of relationship, the same kind of partner. Most people get traumatized by an event and they're afraid. They haven't processed that event properly, which is where neutral attention or non-polar attention comes in. We're going to talk about this in a second. But for now, you have to understand there's two different types of attention, positive and negative. Life only cares about the content of our attention, what we're giving more attention to. If we have a reality in which this is our current situation, and we're presented with a juncture in our life path. Let's say it's a important business decision that you have to make, or a challenge comes up in your business regarding an employee or whatever it may be. If we choose to positively perceive it and the content of our positive attention is, hey, somehow this will help me grow, then the lifeline will shift to a more positive lifeline. More of that thing that you feel positively about will manifest. On the other hand, if we feel negatively about it and we think, oh no, this is something that's bad, well, that bad thing will happen. So you see what's happening here? We feel positively and our mind perceives the content to be positive. We feel negatively and our mind perceives a content to be negative. Let's say something unfortunate happens to you. Let's say you get a bill, or you get like a very big tax bill. Immediately you're like, oh, this is bad. If this happened, that means something worse or terrible will happen. How do you know that? You're just assuming that because you've become fearful. It's make you become fearful. When we have a feeling, we try to justify the presence of that feeling by thinking about other things that potentially could make this fear stronger. Why do we do that? We're feeling creatures. When we feel something, we feel alive, therefore we survive. That is our biological conditioning. When we are in a state of fearfulness, we start to spew up all of these things that could potentially happen. Oh no, now that could go wrong and something else could go wrong. Oh no, what if this big tax bill means I can't pay my business expenses and I can't pay my rent, or I can't pay like my employees? What if all of these things happen? That's when you go into a spiral, because now this negative attention starts to influence the content of your attention. I hope this is making sense. If you have any questions, just let me know below. The key thing is it has to have a correspondence of heart and mind. When you feel negatively in your heart, the mind immediately spews up negative things, which then makes it manifest, which makes you shift into a corresponding lifeline where more of that negative thing will happen. But here's what's crucial. This is non-polar neutral attention. If we perceive something that's happened to us with non-polar and neutral attention, it simply comes into our lives and passes. It has no power over us. So let's say in this unfortunate circumstance where you got hit with a big tax bill, you simply looked at it and you accepted it and you had neither positive nor negative about it. You would still continue on that same life path that you were before. Nothing would really change. It would dissolve itself. For most people, they resist their past traumas and their fears by attributing negative attention to it. Think about how this happens. Whenever something has happened to us in the past that we don't like, we try to run away from it because the feelings are too strong and we don't know how to handle it. So when we run away, what are we essentially doing? We're resisting it. Whatever you resist persists. You give it force, it has a counter force back onto you. So we spend our whole lives resisting all of the things that have happened in the past that we don't like. And we live from that place of trauma. And because of that, situations that affirm that trauma keep coming up. So an example that I can give you for me was bullying. For my whole life, I used to tell myself, oh, I'm this way because I got bullied. I'm justifying my shortcomings because I was bullied as a kid. But then I realized what was happening and I flipped the script. And I said, you know what? Maybe this bullying was good for me. Immediately shifted positive lifelines. I started to go to the gym and work out. Oh, I have all of this grit and determination to be better and improve myself because I got bullied. Now my story's I've become successful at making these videos, being on camera, because when I was a kid, I got bullied for making YouTube videos playing the guitar, because that's what happened. And when I tell myself this story, and I really truly believe it, because there's always two different sides to the coin. Always up to you. It's your choice on how you perceive it. This is 100% in your control. How you choose to perceive something is 100% your responsibility. What happens after may not be. But if you can choose your attention, I can tell you what happens after is going to correspond with that attention. Now that you hopefully understand this, let's talk about how to use this to effectively create reality. I'm going to give you another concrete example to help you fully understand how I've used this in my personal life and why this is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. When I got started in this journey, my dream was to quit my 9-to-5, my full-time job, and get into a business and become an entrepreneur because I wanted time and financial freedom. Okay, that was my main thing. I worked at a summer internship in engineering. It was to go into this corporate career. Every time I went in there, I literally saw people wanting to kill themselves. Like they wanted to stick their arms in the machines to get workers' comp so they didn't have to work there anymore. And the environment was so horrible. It was like a factory. And there were a lot of machines and it was really dark and you had to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to work by 6. It was quite far away from me. And I was like, I can't spend the next 40 years of my life doing this. This is no way to live. This is worse than prison. Okay, maybe not worse than prison, but it's kind of like prison. I then set a goal that, hey, I would by January 1st, or like by May 2019, I had to make a certain amount. Told myself I want to make 5K a month because that's the income that I was getting from my internship. They offered me a full-time role after I graduate at 5K a month. And I told my parents, hey, if I can make 5K a month by myself after I graduate college, you can't give me shit for pursuing my own path. And brown parents are like, you know, they're in the struggle mentality, the work hard, the 9-to-5 mentality. So they were like, oh, like you're gonna do that. What, by fucking making YouTube videos online on your computer? No, you have to fight and struggle to earn your place under the sun. I took it as a challenge and I started on this journey. And in January, I went all in. January of 2019, I went all in. And you can look back at my YouTube videos. And when I tried to go all in, at first there was some momentum and I remember signing my first client and my first coaching client. You know, 1 month I did 3K, which is getting pretty close. But then May of 2019 came by. And up until then, I was in this struggle mindset. I was always in this fear. My attention was always sucked in by the fear of failing and the fear of not, you know, performing and proving to my parents that I could do it. And by then, by May, I'd already made the decision that I wasn't going to go into the job. And I told my parents that, I'm like, you know what, I'm doing okay, and I can promise you by May I can make my first 5K month, and then you can't give me shit. That's what I did. I formally quit the job. I released that safety net from under me. The month of May came around and I realized, you know, I was really struggling and fighting, but that's when the pressure was at an all-time high. I wanted to avoid failure like hell, okay? And you know, I remember just being so much pressure, and every time I talked to a prospective client, I was just so desperate and needy for the sale. That month, I literally got no clients and I made absolute zero. And that's never happened before prior to that. And that's when it really hit me. Like I went into like a completely deep spiraling pit and I just completely said, fuck it. And I had a dark night of the soul almost. But that's when I realized my attention up until then was 100% on avoiding failure. I was resisting failure so much. I was so afraid to fail. Every single resource I had within me, internal resource, my energy, my attention, my time, was on avoiding failure and resisting that anxiety that I had within me. But that month, when I actually failed and my worst nightmare had come to life, it all dropped. This is it. Like I failed. I'm done. What's next? Well, from this place, I can just keep on trying because I quit the job anyways. I just kept going, but this time my attention was no longer so absorbed, so sucked away by all of the fears and anxieties and the failure that I was trying to avoid. Now I had more attention available to focus on what I wanted, which is to get to that 5K month. Literally June of 2019, I had my first ever 8K month. I made my first ever $8,000 in 1 month in June. In July, I made my first 12K month. In August, by August of 2019, I made my first 20K month. And I shit you not, the year prior, I made a goal when I started that by July of 2019, I would make my first 20K month. Even though I would have been completely happy with 5K a month, I just said, you know what, why don't we just set that goal anyways? And then by January of 2020, around 6 months later, I had my first $100,000 month. Okay, so that goes to show what happens when you let go of resisting failure so much and just shift your attention to what you want instead. When I focused on what I wanted to move away from, I moved towards that. When I focused on what I wanted to move towards, I moved towards that. Life doesn't differentiate. Positive and negative attention are polar. They have attractive qualities. They just attract realities. Okay, you have to remember that. Most people are more afraid of failing than they love to succeed. They're more afraid to lose money than they love making money. Shift your attention towards what is wanted instead. Now, I know this is very, very easy to say, so I'm going to share with you a concrete method in which you can do this. This method is called accept and redirect, a combination of both utilizing polar and non-polar attention. So this is crucial. I want you to pay close attention to this. There's 3 main steps to using this, but I promise you if you use it, all of the energy that you give to this negative attention is going to dissipate and you'll have more energy left over to feed this positive version of reality that you want to create. Let's talk about how that works. Step number 1 to the accept and redirect method. Recall what happened to me during the month of May. I went into a deep pit of despair and my worst fear had come to life. So this means I had fully accepted failure. When we accept something, we can't be in resistance. You can't be in resistance and acceptance at the same time. Acceptance is the antidote to resistance. Please understand this. This is like the ancient art of Aikido. The sole method is to take the momentum of the attacker and use it against him. We're not mustering up any sort of energy. The only energy that's being exerted is in redirecting. I'm getting out of the way. Your goals literally want to be manifested. You're just in the way. You just need to get out of the way for it to come into existence. This is how you do that. This is the ancient art of Aikido in the mental form. We begin with full acceptance of current situation. Whatever issues are going on in your life right now, whatever you feel stuck with, whatever your worst nightmare is, imagine that it happens. You get fully on board with it happening and you imagine and you see how life still goes on despite it happening. You are no longer worried by your worst nightmare. You're no longer haunted. This is absolutely critical because most people are like, oh, if I accept the worst case scenario, won't it manifest in my life? No, it won't. Quite the contrary. If you accept the worst case scenario, you're no longer giving it the energy of your resistance. If that's the case, you're no longer feeding it. But if you keep resisting it, you keep feeding it, it's more likely to happen in your life because you keep feeding it. But if you simply accept it and you get out of the way, this is where neutral attention gets used. Acceptance is neutral attention. In order to make a change in any area of our lives, it has to begin with acceptance. Full, utter, complete acceptance of this current moment. We cannot change the current moment. No matter how hard you try, you cannot change right now because the present is continually becoming past. By the time you catch it, it's already become past. There is no way to change this present moment. What you can do, what is in your power, is to choose what you would like instead in that next moment. This is where it gets interesting. Step number 2. After you accept this current moment and all of the problems, and you follow that track of thinking to what the worst case scenario would be. Hey, I'm making 2K a month. What if the next month I just made absolute zero? That's my worst fear. That's the worst version of this current setback. So think about what the worst version of the current setback is. If it could get worse, what's the worst that could possibly happen? you'll probably always arrive at death. But that's probably the most unlikely thing to happen, because we try to trick ourselves into believing if my business dies, I die. We become attached, we become identified with the things that we do. Get to the worst case scenario and get into complete acceptance of it. That way you drop all importance. Step number 2 is perceive how this unfortunate or this mishap could potentially be a blessing in disguise. Any event that happens is a neutral event. We give it positive, negative, or neutral energy by the nature of our attention. Instead of looking at it as, oh shit, this is bad, we look at it as, hey, how could this potentially be an advantage? How could this potentially be good? Right now in our lives, my wife and I were going through a real tough time with real estate. So we signed a contract and we're about to close, and all of a sudden the buyer's not responding, the seller's not responding, and the seller's agent isn't responding. We assume they got a higher offer and they want to back out, but we don't want to take it to litigation, take it to court, because that's again 3 more months and that's just causing more problems. We could just cut our losses and back out. That's what's happening right now. You know, I look at it as this event that happened. We invested so much time and so much energy. My wife was so excited to get the house. How could this be a blessing in disguise? Maybe if we got into the house, something bad would have happened. Maybe there's something bad about the area that God, the universe, is preventing us from experiencing. Maybe there's a better house for us. Maybe there's a reason this happened. Have you ever considered that? Like any event that happens in your life, maybe this is happening for a reason. If you didn't miss that bus could have crashed or something bad would have happened, and the universe is trying to protect you from it. How do you know it all? This is easier to do, by the way, once you've already gotten to a state of acceptance. If you're in that state where the wound is fresh and something bad literally just happened, don't expect yourself to look for blessings in disguise. Just get to a point of accepting, okay, and getting to terms that this really just happened. And once you get to a more neutral point, then you can start to look at how could this potentially be positive. And then the step is continually redirecting our attention to what is wanted instead. If I could be in a place of full equanimity and full acceptance, now I have my attention freed up to fully choose what's wanted instead. Oh, this house isn't working out. What do we want? We want a house that is X, Y, and Z and has all of the qualities that we're looking for. Once you get really, really good at doing this, you become unstoppable. Nothing can stop you. This whole process determines which life path that you follow, which quantum event manifests, which quantum event you experience in your life. And this all has to do with your attention. There is a great reason why so many cultures, so many ancient religions even, they talk about attention. They talk about attending to something. They talk about giving something your attention or observing it, being in an observation mode. In here, we're combining both this non-polar attention and then we're getting to polar. With non-polar attention, we get into acceptance mode. This is neither good nor bad. I'm just accepting that this fully happened. Then we start to go into a little bit of positives. How could this be a blessing in disguise? And then we build up to full-blown positive when we're in a state of equanimity. What most people do is they're in a resistance mode and they say, oh, you know, let's look for the good in this. Or they say affirmations in the mirror when they feel shit about themselves. If you feel shit about yourself today, allow yourself, accept that you're feeling like crap. And once you're in a place of equanimity, then you can focus on what's wanted instead. But if you try to huff and puff your chest and try to suppress or hide or repress what you're feeling, it is going to haunt you back in the future at some time. Then that affirmation, that thing that you're doing becomes a form of resistance. You're resisting feeling something by saying the affirmation. That's what's happening. So this 3-step method continually applied has the power to completely change your life. If you want to take this deeper, I've made a short movie around 29 minutes long on the art of reality creation. The very things that helped me in my journey from nothing to making 7 figures consistently. And it all had to do with me learning how to properly direct my attention, understand the mirror principle, and understand how to shift my identity. I talk about all of these 3 main things in that movie in complete depth. So what you can do is, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a business owner, if you're a professional and you're seeing that you're stuck at a certain revenue level, you know, you're kind of at low 6 figures or high 5 figures in your business and you just want to take it to that next level, break through that revenue ceiling, this is going to be extremely helpful for you. Go to the pinned comments to access the link to that movie. Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next page in the movie right now. Thanks.